welcome everybody. Today's session is Profit as a Guiding Structure, Prioritizing Value in Digital Transformations. I'm Scott Maddox. I lead the Global Adoption Management team here at Tulip, working with customers at Tulip who are going through the early stages of their digital transformation journey. And today I am joined by Dave Griffith. Dave is a manufacturing expert, a consultant, an entrepreneur, a podcaster, a true Renaissance man. And he is here to talk about the financial impacts of digital transformations in manufacturing. Dave, welcome. Why don't we start? Just share a little bit about your background in manufacturing and what you do today.
Absolutely, Scott. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I should really tape record that intro and just play it when everyone asks who I am. But no, it's very nice to meet everyone. My name is Dave Griffith. I've spent the last 15 plus years in automation and manufacturing, working everything from large OEMs on machine builds to smaller, mid-sized manufacturers, reps, and distributors. Spent about 3 years running a systems integration company. Our focus was on the MES, the manufacturing execution system layer. So we did a lot of data analytics. And then about 4 years ago, I left that because I wanted to focus on bringing more value and more execution to the plant floor. I see kind of time and time again, sometimes we have the data, sometimes we don't have the data. But lots of times, maybe we collect the data, but we struggle to execute on that. And I find a lot of that is training. A lot of that is just not understanding. A lot of that becomes, how can we go explain the engineering PowerPoint slide to the operations folks and the folks on the plant floor so we can actually go make an impact? And so that has been the focus of the last 4 years of myself with Kaplan Solutions. We've done a bunch of work with customers all over. And from that, we've created a series of workshops and a bit of a framework called Profit by Design. I'm excited to talk more about that today, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump to Profit by Design, I want to just zoom in a little bit there on what you said. You started your career in a fairly technical manufacturing role, and now you're running a consulting business. I'm interested in that sort of journey there. How does that early career experience on the factory floor impact how you consult and how you run your business today?
Absolutely. So I, like many people who grew up in the Rust Belt, spent some time working at manufacturing facilities, kind of other industrial groups growing up, everything from putting things manually together to forklifts to why can't we go find all of these things? And my biggest struggle while I was working with them is that there was a disconnect between the things that I was seeing problem-wise and the things that I saw management going and doing. And as I continued to move up and get a technical degree and work on the technical engineering and sales side and the technical delivering of these opportunities, I kind of saw that over and over again, is that lots of the problems that we see and solve are very much known on the plant floor. We maybe not have the data to go ahead and prove those because lots of facilities don't have data collection to that point when I go and talk to them. But lots of the problems intuitively are known by the people, the operators on the plant floor. And I have found that if I can go ask them the correct questions, they can go tell me what their problems and pain points are. And then if we can go reframe what those problems and pain points are, we can find, large, what I like to call breakthrough opportunities. And I've seen that very much time and time again, to the point of you have to go work with the financial folks, the managers and the C-level people. But most of the time, we're going to go out on the plant floor and we're going to go find what those problems look like. And very much almost exclusively, we're going to go find large problems, large opportunities by walking out on the plant floor, which is why it's one of my favorite things to do. Most of the time, anytime I come in to go work things, you will see top of the list is we're going to go meet people and then we're going to go walk the floor because the floor is almost exclusively where the problems and solutions to the problems lie.
Yeah, that resonates tremendously with us here at Tulip, that focus on the operator, that focus on the friction in their hour-to-hour, day-to-day life. So this methodology you've coined as Profit by Design, for those uninitiated, what does that look like for you and what does that look like for your clients in action?
Absolutely. So as I told you, Scott, I've spent a bunch of years doing this and time again, I see large opportunities on the plant floor. And so I have gone through and worked with groups who do, 6-week or 6-month long workshops and discoveries, and we're going to go embed people. And I have found that the biggest problem with that is it just takes so long. It takes so long to go get people to go spend any amount of their brain power and their time for a long duration. So for me, Profit by Design is a quick series of workshops. We are 3 days long. We put together a cross-functional team. Our goal is to find people who know the different parts of the business. We go through a process mapping exercise. And then, as I've told you, my favorite place to go start looking at problems and what these opportunities look like are at those intersections of the processes. A good example of this is last year I worked with a mid-sized brewery and co-packer. I came in after being somewhere else for a couple of weeks. We had just started data collection. I saw that they spent about 50 hours down the week before on the single packaging line that they had. And 50 hours is about half of the time they were supposed to run. So after a whole bunch of walking, going and talking to the line leads to understand why we were down, going and talking to the seller people, the folks who are supposed to make sure basically the beer and the seltzers and everything that we're going to go can and bottle are ready to go, and to go talk to the quality people, it became readily apparent that we just have this huge convergence of misinformation, right? The schedule, as in most facilities, goes and changes a whole bunch of times over the course of the day or over the course of the week. And so because of that, we don't know what's going next. Something that's scheduled for today might run 2 weeks from now, and something that they want to run 2 weeks from now, they may attempt to go run today, which is what most of us know is basically impossible when it takes, a couple of days or a couple of weeks to get everything up and running. So we worked with the developer, and that developer, they did everything on Google Docs, and we don't have to talk about how we shouldn't do things on Google Docs for a large, tens of millions of dollars a year company. But they do everything on Google Docs. So we spent about half a day building out an MVP of what this would look like to go ahead and have the conversation to basically have digital sign-offs. And they were tracking their application on an iPad. So we basically slapped an iPad up to the television that already existed, did a not insignificant amount of training of let's go make sure that everyone knows how to do this. And third shift in the weekends, as everyone here probably knows, are the most difficult to go do that. And the following week, we saved 30 or 40 hours of downtime. After that point, we kind of did a little bit of back calculation, realized that over the course of the year is worth at least $5 million to the organization, and a fairly insignificant amount of time and process saved them, the vast majority, 80 to 90% of that, of kind of normal issues that we're going to see. There are always special variance issues that are going to pop up. We're never going to save 100% of the downtime, but we save them, we calculated about $4.5 million of that. So that's a good example that I like to tell everyone. And it's my goal to kind of focus on examples like that. We've got 2 or 3 different groups who are struggling with very similar things throughout the process. That's where I like to start. And we spend day 2 and 3 focused on those. We sketch up very simple, hey, this is what the problem is. And then we go through the process of trying to put a dollar value on it, which is why it's important that cross-functional team has some people that have an idea of what those dollars look like. And as Scott, as you and I have talked about, and we'll talk about more, it doesn't particularly matter if it's a $50,000 an hour issue or if it's a $70,000 an hour issue. If the hours every week and every month are enough, there is a huge hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year worth of issue that we can go ahead and calculate. And then I always like to loop the financial people back in at the end of day 2 and especially at the end of day 3 so that they can say, yes, this is really a $5 million issue. Because once we have the buy-in from the financial people and from the executives, it's much easier to go take that and turn that into a quick execution to go find those quick wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great example. I really like the example you give there. And I want to, if I can oversimplify and sort of break it into 2 pieces to talk through, I think why we're here today and what you and I share in our passions here. The first piece, I think by and large, manufacturers are very good at, and that is the operational side of continuous improvement, transformation projects, identifying pain points, understanding something here is inefficient, and we have some tools that will help us physically improve the process out on the floor. I think by and large, lean practitioners and Six Sigma black belts and all of those tools exist, and folks are great at that. It's the second piece of what you said, where you said, putting a dollar amount to that, either retroactively, like in the story you told, or proactively to justify the investment to do it in the first place, where we see teams get a little bit stuck, and I think you do as well. In your experience, what do you think it is about that second piece, bringing in the dollar, that becomes so difficult for teams to accomplish?
So from my perspective, I think most of the people working on Lean and Six Sigma and TOC, and I think all of those are great tools, and we certainly use those tools and those methodologies as we go look at things. I think that they are very much focused on the additional, couple of percent, right? And their goal is we're looking for a couple of additional percent. And most of the time we've got engineers trained in those methodologies over and over again. And very infrequently do I see anyone ask, or at least most of the time, very infrequently do I see people ask, hey, what is the dollar value of that? Lots of times I'll see people say, hey, if we're going to go do this project, we need a business case. But most of the time, even a lot of those business cases don't involve, hey, it's going to be X number of dollars. And so I think because we bring lots of those engineering folks in and they've come up through the ranks of the same methodologies, we don't put dollar values on there because we've never done it. And as we know, as technologists, most of us, that is one of the most frustrating things anyone is ever going to say of, we've always done it this way. Why would we go change? Why would we go look at a new piece of technology? And I would say kind of to that point as well, Scott, I see lots of Lean folks and I see lots of Six Sigma and TOC folks, and they are developing really good tools. They're developing lots of SOPs and procedures and all of that. But most of the time it starts on paper and it stays on paper. And I find that lots of the opportunity exists with going and taking it from paper and putting it into a digital platform. As we've all seen, as I could share countless examples of, so many people, have stacks of paper. And if we need to go from changeover 2 to changeover 12, it exists on a big sheet of paper that hopefully someone 5 years ago laminated. And if we haven't done that changeover recently, hopefully we can go find that changeover sheet in, I don't know, the next 2 hours. And we almost never go start looking for the changeover sheet until we need the changeover sheet. And so just taking that physical piece of paper and going from piece of paper that's hopefully laminated or shoved in a drawer somewhere into a digital form gives us huge opportunities to go ahead and leverage tools, especially the digital native tools for all of the younger people who are coming into this industry.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you mentioned the term business case. I think a lot of times proactively you're trying to build that business case and you require that financial analysis, or at least the skill set to do it. Largely for our customers, we see it as just to prioritize. We have all these ideas, we have all these initiatives, we have all these digital tools that we could start to employ, but we are resource constrained, either from a headcount perspective or from an investment perspective or both. And therefore, what's the most bang for our buck, or what's the most bang for our hour of continuous improvement or IT time, right? So that prioritization becomes key, and having the capabilities to do this financial analysis. So when you get into this profit by design methodology with your clients, how do you bring them along? For those that are, it's new to them, they're used to the transformation part or the operational part, but they're not comfortable with the financial piece. You mentioned bringing the finance cross-functional teams back in as part of your workshops. What are some of those discussions like to bring them along?
Those discussions start at the very beginning. I've done lots of technology processes and projects where we've gone through hey, we need to prioritize. We only have so many dollars. We only have so much time to go through this. And it's very good internally when you're looking at that as an organization and we've got a finite budget. The conversations I like to have are not necessarily, hey, we've got a finite budget. What can we get from the budget? The conversations I like to have are, there are, X, Y, and Z opportunities. Let's go look at what these opportunities can bring us. And from my experience, especially the financial people, the CFOs, the comptrollers out there are going to say, hey, I know maybe this wasn't necessarily in the budget, but if we can go put an additional $10 million to the bottom line of the organization, we can go find the extra percent in order to go ahead and do that because it is so transformational to our business. A good example of that, Scott, is last year I was working on a connected workforce development tool with an organization that was struggling to go roll this out to their operators. And one of the things I like to do is go talk to all the stakeholders within it, all the different groups, right? So we've got operators, we've got maintenance people, we've got a bunch of different techs, we've got operations, and everyone has their own pain points. And it's really important to go build internal champions. And from my experience, lots of those internal champions are the people who are going to struggle against it the most. The people that ask me the toughest questions at the beginning of these workshops are the people that I need to go change their mind and find points in order to go help them. Because as soon as I turn them into champions, they're going to go be the people who are going to be like, I've been here 35 years. This is what I want to do. I see the difference between this and the last 12 things. And if I can go find value out of this now, it's going to make the next 10 years of my career much better. A good example of that, while I was there, I was actually out to lunch with one of the maintenance managers at that point. And I was asking him, Christian, what can we do to help the maintenance people on this staff? And we looked at it and he said, Scott, he told me that their biggest issue was they cannot go find drawings, right? Like if they go and have an issue with a machine and the machine goes down, if they can't immediately solve the issue, or if it's not in the 8-inch stack of papers that just kind of flutter around everywhere, they spend the better part of 2 hours every single time going through the process of looking for that. And I'm like, that's crazy, because those are 2 hours of downtime because the line is down and it's a very expensive downtime for them. And so we did a little bit of calculation as we were going through it, and we are super conservative, right? If we could find 2 to 5% of additional uptime for this organization, we could go save or make them $10 million over the course of the year. And what we did is we took the key critical drawings, we put them in our application. And then this application in particular allows us to go ahead and print QR codes. So we took the QR codes, and the proposal was, hey, we're going to go put these QR codes up on the critical machines. And then once we put them up on the critical machines, we're going to already have this application that your folks are supposed to be using. They're going to go take their cell phone. They're going to go take the iPad tablets that we have out there. They're going to be able to scan it. And suddenly we go from, hey, I need to go spend 2 hours looking for this drawing, mindless of can we find the correct revision of the drawing, to the, hey, I have this in front of me right now. I can go solve the problem. And so there are huge applications, there are huge opportunities, and much of it is how can we go get the people involved, especially the people who are struggling against you. And when you're going through the process of saying, not, I want to go spend what we'll call it $200,000 on this application, I think it's going to do these things. And you say, hey, we can go roll out the rest of the application. We're going to spend, 2 months going and building all of this for your critical machines. And we very conservatively think we're going to go save 2 to 5%. Let's go pull in the operations manager. Let's go pull in the comptroller. And as soon as you start to say, hey, we've got this $10 million opportunity for you guys, it doesn't involve buying new machines. It doesn't involve trying to find another shift. It doesn't involve any of these things. And it's going to make it easier to train people. And it's going to do all of these things. It becomes a different conversation than, hey, let's go prioritize business cases. Let's go see if we've got the money in the budget to do it Q4.
Yeah, you hit on sort of 3 related topics I want to zoom in on there, which are stakeholder management, championship of these projects, as well as some of the change management and the softer management skills required organizationally for some of these digital transformation projects. To us at Tulip, we stress a lot about preparation and preparedness to take on digital transformations. What are some of the things you see that customers could be doing or clients of yours could be doing before day one to prepare themselves either organizationally or from a change management, a cultural perspective, so that these projects run smoothly and get the value that you're driving towards?
The biggest thing that I see time and time again people are missing is basically all of that preparation work, right? People, for whatever reason, most of the time say, I want to go purchase a digital transformation, or I want to go purchase an Industry 4.0 initiative. But the first conversations I have to have with every single group, Scott, is, okay, what does this mean for you? And almost exclusively that first meeting, we're going to have, if we've got 10 people in the room, we've got 14 different thoughts as to what this is going to be. So the first thing that I do with these groups is try to set very realistic goals, right? Digital transformation can mean so many things, but if we try to bite off one of the entirety of it, unless we're shutting the facility down or retraining everyone for 2 years, we've got very little chance of kind of flipping the switch and doing a top to bottom complete digital transformation. So my goal on the preparation side is very much helping to shift that mindset of, we're going to go do everything in 6 weeks or 6 months, to the, let's go pick a couple of use cases. Let's go be exceptionally successful with those use cases. And then once we have those use cases, we can go find other opportunities. And as the use cases build on top of each other, as the internal group that we have to the organization becomes more bought into this, we are going to find more opportunity to go through the entirety of this transformation process.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. You and I, and you used this word earlier, I liked it. You and I are both, I guess by definition, maybe by choice, technologists here in the current state of our careers. Obviously, manufacturing customers have choices of how they spend their resources to improve their business, many of which are now digital tools and digital transformation projects, but a lot of which remain sort of analog projects. You can solve a lot of these problems with physical Kanban bins, might be the very simple analog answer to the problem. In your experience, as you've gone through your career and now that you're on the side of the technologist, what are the differences in the financial impacts relative between analog and digital projects and the impact that they have afterwards?
I should start by saying I absolutely think of myself as a technologist, but I think that myself and almost everyone who works at a manufacturing facility are looking for the easy way, right? We want to go do minimum viable products. And while I think all of us would love to go build, digital Kanban boards that match the physical and power lights and buzzers and all of those things, that maybe we want robots to be able to go pick and place every single thing of those. That is not a realistic phase one for the vast majority of the groups that I work with, right? So the vast majority of groups that I work with, just the concept of a Kanban board is almost mind-blowing, right? And it's a lot of tools that we have that the goal is, let's go start with the physical, let's go start with the analog, but at some point quickly, we need to go transition that to the, yes, this works. Let's go build it in a digital tool form for a number of reasons, right? One, because it's easier to train. And as Scott, as you and I have discussed, I'm not sure I've walked into a manufacturing facility in the last half a dozen years or longer who's been like, yes, I could get rid of my staff today. I have, people lining up who are skilled, who are going to go show up to work, who have some semblance of an idea of what my process is. So our employees continue to be some of our most valued resources, especially our experienced employees. I worked with a client. They had one guy who rebuilt valves. He had been there 45 years. And I showed up 6 months later and they're like, oh, he retired. And they're like, we could really use help understanding how to go rebuild these valves. And I'm like, sure, we can certainly put something together on how we can do that. I'm like, when's he going to come to rebuild valves? And they're like, well, assuming he's still alive, he's going to come in February and rebuild all of our valves. And I look at the calendar and I'm like, guys, that's 5 months from now. You think he's going to show up in 5 months and we currently have 0 people who know how to go rebuild any of these valves? So that's just one of those examples of we need the physical knowledge, and the digital tools are allowing us to go capture that knowledge. And as I had mentioned earlier, one of the things that I see time and time again is we've got younger people coming in. They're very much digitally native. Most of us figure out how to go do things by watching YouTube videos, and sometimes we're going to read the manual if we've got questions on the manual, but we want, 5 bullet points or 3 bullet points or a step-by-step process. And if we can go create everything into a YouTube video, and if we can go segment that YouTube video into timestamps, like when we go on Google and we're like, hey, Google, can you help me solve this problem? They're like, watch this YouTube video starting here for 90 seconds, and this will probably answer your problem. We have to go look at leveraging digital tools like that, because that is the workforce that is coming in, and that is the workforce that we will continue to see coming into the future. So analog tools are great. Digital tools are going to help us take those analog tools to the next level, and they're going to help us replicate that success for years to come.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. You led us down a path that I want to go down now, which is around the workforce and labor. Oftentimes, I think you and I both run into this with digital transformation projects. There's sort of this unspoken or taboo topic of, well, if you're saving me cost in the form of labor costs, that means there's some sort of reduction in the workforce that's coming. And therefore, culturally, it's going to be hard to sell this project if it means layoffs, to use the word bluntly, right? How do you see that play out in the digital transformations that you work with? And what are some of the, do you actually see those layoffs come to fruition, or is there more of a shift in the labor force as a result of these projects?
I think that every time someone sees a consultant walk through the door, they think of that office space mentality of, hey, I'm going to have two guys sit down. They're going to both be in like matching suits. They're going to have no idea what goes on here. They're going to interview a whole bunch of people. And then we're just going to go fire some people because that is the easiest way to reduce costs. And there certainly might be some industries that makes sense. Again, in manufacturing, that is almost exclusively not the best way that I see to go ahead and reduce cost. As we look at going and building digital tools, as we look at reducing pain points, as we look at streamlining what these processes look like, there are certainly sometimes that we see that, at least in theory, it frees up a body worth of time, well, a full-time employee or multiple full-time employees worth of time. Very rarely do I ever see that turn into someone gets laid off. Most of the time when people get laid off, and that is the reason, they really wanted to go lay that person off for other reasons, and this was just what that opportunity turned into. Most of the time, I see that being, hey, instead of we need to find 3 more employees, we need to find 1 or 2 more employees because we still are running at a deficit, but we are slightly able to run better now with the deficit of employees that we currently have. And then lots of times I see that as the opportunity to move up. And from my perspective, when we talk about the labor force, I think especially the younger generation doesn't see the manufacturing going and working as an operator as something they're going to do for 30 or 40 years because they don't see the upward mobility, right? If I start as an operator on a palletizer today, and the best thing I can do over the course of the next 30 years is to run the filler for some period of time, and then maybe I'm going to go be a shift supervisor, there are very few people who want to do that. There are very few people who want to be the person who knows how to rebuild all the valves or to be the palletizer expert over the course of everything. So from my perspective, these tools are going to allow us to free up space. They're going to allow us to be able to take some of these people, especially a lot of these digitally native folks, and allow them to go help us build these tools and applications. As I tell everyone, Scott, I am not the expert on your process, right? Like, you guys hopefully have experts on your process. Every once in a while, I run into groups who are like, we don't really know what to do. And I'm like, well, we'll go figure out how to run your process from scratch. That's never the most fun thing that I do. And it's always exceptionally expensive for the end user. But most times we can go leverage those experts and again, build those tools and allow some of that upward mobility. And once we see, fun, interesting tools come out onto the line that people get to use, once we kind of move away from the historic no phones are allowed on the plant floor, and it's just like a Faraday cage for 8 or 10 or 12 hours over the course of the day and not a generally fun place to work. Once we go start leveraging those tools and showing that there's upward mobility, we're going to be able to train and retain those people for a longer period of time.
Yeah, that mobility piece is huge. And we've got countless stories from the Tulip projects we've run where some of our best champions, change agents, now effectively continuous improvement folks in our customer base started as an operator who built an app or a couple of apps that freed them up from a labor perspective, and opened up a world where they could become the Tulip expert on site and start to knock down problems all over the facility, not just on that one assembly line or in that one machine shop where they started. So couldn't agree more. My last question here for you. You're clearly passionate about the world of manufacturing. I love that. What makes you most excited? What has you most excited about sort of the future of the crossroads of technology and manufacturing?
I think there are so many ways that we can go with this, right? Like, I think that everyone is talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Many of us spent a bunch of time trying to go push and use AR and VR on the plant floor. For me, it's very much twofold. One, it's very much taking the consumer technology that we already use, that everyone already uses every day, be it the phones, be it the tablets, and going and taking and enabling people to go use those out on the plant floor as one, because it's super inexpensive and everyone already knows how to use it. And two, it's going and building good user interfaces and user experience. Historically, everyone that has ever seen a screen or a series of screens from the 90s or 2000s or 2020s knows that it's, hey, I have this, but, one, it's really ugly, and two, it's clunky, and three, I don't particularly know how to use this. One of the stories I like to tell, Scott, is the last story for everyone here, is the story of my Aunt Sue. So my Aunt Sue worked at a cookie factory for like 30 years. It scares me. I didn't eat the cookies that she worked at the cookie factory. She swore they were safe. I didn't particularly eat them. My Aunt Sue is one of the worst people with technology that I think I will ever meet. Every time I go back home to go visit family, my Aunt Sue always has the same problem, right? She says, Dave, my phone has no more space to go take pictures. And I'm like, well, okay, Aunt Sue. And so over the years, I set her up with Google Photos. I set her up with Amazon's free photos. I set her up with all of these photos and tools and things like this. And last summer, I go back and she's like, the worst thing happened. She's like, I destroyed my phone. I lost all of my pictures. And I'm like, well, Aunt Sue, good news. I have backed them up. And we eventually got them backed up. And so when I say she is a super technology novice, we all have an Aunt Sue. I will also say that my Aunt Sue, every time I log onto Facebook, has managed to share and comment and do all of these crazy things and fill my feed with things that I don't particularly want to see, but I know she's okay. So as I go look at developing interfaces and things like that, I look at how can we go make something as easy, as intuitive as a Facebook, as a LinkedIn, as something that we all use every day. Because if we can go build intuitive interfaces for people, it's going to allow everyone to go ahead and use it, and they won't need, 2 to 16 weeks of training to be able to do so.
Yeah, I like that. The Aunt Sue litmus test. That's a good one. I'll keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
Well, perfect. Dave, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the discussion. I appreciate your passion, and we'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Scott. It was very good to be here with everyone today.
Take care.